I'm Carmiece Graves, and I practice family law in the Washington, D.C. area.
One of the questions we have to think about, like say if you're married and you're dealing with your house and you own it together, the question is, well, we have an asset that we need to deal with. Sunset, they just abandoned me and come back, they've been gone, they've been gone. They've been gone, they ain't seen nobody, so I guess it's over. Like this, man, you just can't leave. Not true. Okay, that's what they call me. Are there people throughout history that despite whatever circumstances, they did what they wanted to do? Okay, all right, welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. If this is the first time you have graced me with your presence, let me introduce myself. I'm attorney CPA Carmiece T. Graves. I practice estate planning and family law in the Washington, D.C. and Maryland area. And today we're going to talk about estate planning. I've been doing a lot of videos, getting information out there regarding family law, but the other side of the shop is for those who have been able to acquire some wealth. And now we want to take that next step and understand what we need to do to make those gifts. This is the spirit of giving. It is the holiday season. Hopefully you guys are winding down and getting ready to enjoy a long weekend with friends, family. Be safe if you're traveling. So I thought, what is the spirit that I'm in for this holiday season? And it's one of giving. And that's what estate planning is all about. It's gifting. It's giving to your legacy. It's that succession planning. So I'm going to revisit that now. I'm going to roll out a series just to have you be more informed about what it is, because it's an area that a lot of people don't know about. It's not something that you run into in everyday life. A lot of it, you run into it when you run into it, and there's things that you wish you had known, things you wish you had did, things you wish somebody would have told you, and that is the purpose of my show. So a little bit about me. I am a CPA, I'm an attorney, and estate planning became a passion of mine when I was working at a corporate and finance attorney at a big DC law firm. And pro bono, I got to do estate planning. It's the area that I chose, and it was so endearing and it was so sweet to help people plan their affairs. And it's a thoughtful, loving process. But where we're going to start today, we're going to answer two questions. I'm going to deal with two questions today only, because estate planning can come on like a fire hose. There's a lot of terms of art you don't know, a lot of information I could download and rattle off, and you'll head a spin. And I'm going to work on that. What I'd like to do is I work on providing you all. I'm going to probably boost after I do the shows. I boost the post later, and I'm going to work on providing some notes, just some high level notes, so you can remember some key terms, because this is educational information so that we can start to integrate it into our planning, into our system of how we deal with our assets and things of that nature. So the first question that I'm going to answer for you today is, what happens if you don't do estate planning? Okay, they're like this. Well, a lot of people I know haven't done it, so what's the big deal now? Is this a new thing? And what happens if I just don't get around to it? Okay, and that will further clarify its purpose, which is the second question that I think I would want to understand. What exactly is the purpose intent of estate planning? And when we go over what happens when you pass away, and many people do, without an estate plan, what happens? And then you'll see the purpose of estate planning. Okay, so let's just start off with some basics. So I just did a consultation this week, and there was a basic question, and no questions are, crazy questions. You're here to learn, right? So, or I'm here to share information as to what I know. So the first question I was on a call is, what is an estate? What's considered an estate? And because that word, when I used to think about it, I'm thinking about the pearly gates, rolling up to, the mansion. That's the estate to me, very grandiose idea. But the estate is pretty much basically anything that you own Upon passing, it's your estate, it's your personal property, real property, all the stuff that you own. It's all of your stuff. Estate can be equated to all of your stuff, all of your belongings, right? That's your estate. So we're planning on what to do with your stuff when you pass away. But for the first question, what happens if you've not planned at all? What happens? Well, don't worry. The state upon which you reside has come up with a set of rules by statute that has been adopted to orderly transfer your assets. So if you haven't thought about it, the state has thought about it. That is similar to divorce, where if you are doing now you're going through divorce, you didn't want to go through divorce, there's a set of rules that says this is how we're going to do this, right? And that's what people do with prenuptial agreements. Prenuptial agreements are a part of estate planning because they go in and they change some of the default rules. So there are default rules in each state that will determine how your assets will be conveyed to your heirs. Okay, so we call that the testator is you. And when you pass away without an estate plan, we say you passed away intestate, without a plan. You don't have a plan. So you are going to now, your estate will be governed by the default rules of the state. And they're not bad rules. They're not bad rules. So if you want to ever look them up, you can just look up Maryland intestate rules. I'll provide a link. I'll provide a link to where the rules are, at least for Maryland, so you can lay eyes on it. But here's how it sounds. So moral of the story here, if you do nothing, the state has already done it for you. If you do nothing, the state has already done it for you. So there are rules. So here's how they sound. So they say, okay, who has survived you when you passed away? It says, okay, if you were survived by minor children and you didn't have a spouse, then it's going to be, so if you're surviving with minor children, if they're surviving minor children, share shall be 1/2. So they're going, oh, actually, I'm sorry, I started reading from what the spouse gets. So your spouse will inherit the majority of your estate, and then they start to delineate if you also had minor children. So your estate will be shared between your spouse, 50%, and also your children. That's how they will divide it. It's an example, and they go through many. Like if you don't have a spouse at all, they will just equally divide it between your children. So estate planning, there is a plan in place. Something will happen, and the courts will intervene and make sure that someone is appointed to follow these instructions and execute it. The court will not do it. Okay, they can appoint an attorney, or probably the person that is next of kin and most interested in your affairs. Okay, now this is what happens if you don't do the minimum in terms of drafting a will. Okay, so now we get into, well, okay, what if I don't want my estate to be distributed in that manner? What if I don't want it equally divided between, 3 of my kids and my spouse? What if I want to change that allocation? That is one of the basic steps and purposes of estate planning, is to change the default rules. So that's what a will can do. That's what the trust can do. It can override the basic statutes that have been enacted to manage the succession of your affairs and pass them on to your heirs. You can modify that. So that's what the will is. The will is written instructions by you telling the court who you like to. There's also an order of affairs of a priority, who should be the executor of your estate. So they're going to default to your spouse. But you can say, well, maybe my spouse has dementia or elderly or not available. Then who? Then you want to, have a say about who's going to be the executor. They have rules about that as well. So in your will, one of the first things you do is determine for yourself. I may not want to be like, look, the Maryland rules are fine. I have nothing against the Maryland rules, but for my life and my estate and what I deem important, this is how I would like for it to go. I would like my, middle daughter who is really savvy with financial matters. She's been taking care of me and the spouse in our, elder years. I like for her to handle all the financial affairs. You can determine another child when it comes to my health care. She's a registered nurse. I want her to deal with the doctors. This is where you do the planning and you give the instruction and you take charge and you take leadership as to how things will go. Okay. So that's what estate planning is about. Having your voice be heard in terms of how to wind down your affairs. Another key purpose for estate planning, as you can see, if you leave it up in the air, it could be a race to the courthouse to be the executor or the personal representative if you have not spoken on the matter. It can, leave open conflict over your memorabilia, assets, things that mean a lot to you if you have not spoken as to how those assets should be. Because what the court's going to say, like right here, that's it. That's the extent of the planning. Whatever you have in there, minus your funeral expenses, minus a special election to the spouse, if there's a surviving spouse. After that, we're not going to get into the weeds of what to do with personal property and real property and who gets what, who gets the albums, who gets this, the photos. No, we're not doing that. We're going to say, all of you guys equally share in this estate and work it out. Okay. So if you have conflict, and there's a lot of conflict in families that brew from, way back when, if you, have had kids from different marriages, that's a big one. So a next key purpose for estate planning is to eliminate conflict and to provide clarity. I think it's so important, to and it's not just about handing over financial wealth, but the orderly. We're dealing with that right now in our country, right? Dealing with the insurrection of January 6th, dealing with the orderly transmission of your assets to your heirs. That orderly, transmission is important. It's important for our country. It provides order. Order really lends itself to peace, and it minimizes chaos. And when people are grieving, they really start. And what happens is, think about this. Think about your estate when your loved ones are grieving. Oftentimes what they do is they seek you in the things. So now the things have sentimental value, more so than they ever could have imagined. And now everybody wants mama's tea set and her fur coat or this or that. And she always said that I could have it. And someone's like, no, I'm taking it. I'm the oldest, we can fight about it, and there you go. And, those where those old things come up. And let me tell you, in terms of litigation, I don't do estate litigation. It is vicious. Okay. You think divorce is something? Try being in the middle of a conflict that is brewed since 5 and 6 years old, and all this, I never liked you, and mama always thought you was, better than, it all comes out. It all comes out. Maybe it's long stuff, it's deep stuff that has not been resolved, as opposed to divorce. These people at one point loved each other, and that's still, even it's sometimes the source of why we can't resolve the issue, but it's still brewing in some way. The love is still there. It's a thin line between love and hate. It may be exhibiting itself as hate, but it's still there. They have children in common, brothers and sisters and all that. That's it's when the matriarch and the patriarch passes along, it can be a holy war. And I know some of you have dealt with this and have experienced this. So that's one of the things you really want to think about and encourage. If you're taking care of your parent, you're thinking about, the future of your family, really sit down and start to think about how we can orderly transfer affairs. So that is one of the key purposes. Other purposes for estate planning deal less with tax issues. I mean, the estate tax exemptions are so high now that a lot of people don't have that issue. I think you have to be topping maybe 15 million, and there's estates that have that. And then you're going to be looking at different types of trusts. Today, we're talking about the revocable. We're dealing with estate planning in terms of your succession when you passed away. There are other trusts that you can, and we'll talk about what trusts are, but there are other estate planning tools that you can use for tax reasons. Okay, so avoiding creditors, there are trusts that are designed to help with that as well. So the estate planning process, its broad umbrella is about preserving your wealth and its orderly transmission, or or transmittal to your heirs. So that's why we do it. And so let's take one more step with this. And I'm not going to have this video be too long because I am going to do the series. So today's, I just want to start with, I'm going to provide the link in the video where you can read how the state will deal with your affairs. You can be like, that's fine. I don't care. I mean, but I think also you want to be thoughtful. I do think at a minimum, you want to at least have a will. I feel that will-based planning still subjects your executor to the probate process. So you still have to petition the court, get their permission, get their approval. You have to do a lot of disclosing of, personal financial affairs. And it has an overseer. The court still has oversight that you have to adhere to, even if you have a will. So you can change the order of affairs, but the overall process as to how the final administration of your affairs will happen is still under the jurisdiction of the court. And that's where will-based planning kind of falls short in my regard. So that, again, I'm always thinking your loved ones are grieving. Try and make this process as easy as possible, as seamlessly as possible, right? Thinking ahead, thinking about them. So another part that we want to talk about is the importance of just doing it in terms of thinking about future generations. Let's get really down into the legacy part of this. I have seen what happens when one generation received an inheritance in terms of property, $50,000. I know personally of a young lady who inherited $50,000 from her paternal grandmother, and that youngster became savvy in terms of her investing. And within 4 years, she parlayed that to $800,000 portfolio. Homegirl has no debt. Okay. And with no debt, she has a new, fresh outlook. She's free to figure out and do what she wants, follow her passions, follow her dreams. It's just amazing to see. So you want to think too, when you're thinking about legacy and developing your estate, you can think about ways of funding that, and I want to talk a little bit about that. Maybe we can have some professionals in that area in terms of insurance, in terms of real estate, like what are the assets that we can invest in and develop to fund the estate. I think life insurance is phenomenal. I think life insurance is something that we need to spend more time understanding and investing in, because I would love, and I'm going to make sure that I do, that when I leave this earth, I just turn into money. I mean, that's what life insurance is. It's insurance, you're going to pass away. And you have insurance that says, when I pass away, I want to turn into $500,000, $1 million. My great uncle just passed away, not this year. He did great estate planning on behalf of his family. So while they were grieving, his immediate family, while they were grieving, he also provided so much hope for their future, and really not just lip service. I mean, he has set them up to be able to, I don't know all the details because it's a private affair when you do estate planning. I'm on my business. I didn't ask. But it seems like, they kept saying, you guys have inherited quite a bit and you're set up. What we need that. We really deserve that, and it's really nice to think about future generations and propel them forward with a greater start, right? We're always talking about, the disproportionate impacts on blah, 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 and people that are more vulnerable. We can change that with some foresight and planning. One of the concepts that has to go away is the idea that I can't take it with me, so what? I'm like, aren't these your kids and loved ones? I mean, aren't these the people that you hold most dearest and true? So that idea that I can't take it with me, so what? It's really I find it interesting when I hear it. I'm like, that's interesting. Think about your spouse. Make sure that they're okay. And again, one of the key things, if you have children from different marriages, we all are living life. Y'all know I know all about it. No judgment there. But think about that. How do the kids from your first wife and your second wife, how do they get along? Do not leave your, spouse out there, because people play cool while you're here. But when you gone, it could be on, okay? It could be a holy war. And had you thought about it? Have you planned to make sure, one of the things that runs into, like, say if you have a spouse and it's your second spouse, second marriage, and you guys somehow you're in the house that you had for a long time. Like, say it's you, the husband, and you have brought your wife into this house that you've had for a long time, that your kids have lived in. When you pass away, you might want to think critically. Well, do I want to leave my spouse? And now, under the intestate law, say if you don't do planning, your spouse would probably be the executor of your estate and personal representative if she petitioned the court to do so. But she could be in, some serious hot water if they're like, that's my daddy property and over my dead body, and in a whole bunch of litigation. And, I've seen it, the dramas at the funerals. We haven't even gotten the death certificate yet. And it's a problem at the repast. People coming into houses, snatching coats, taking paintings off the wall. You might say, listen, babe, I don't want you to deal with any of that. Let them have that. I got you a life insurance policy and you're going to be fine. Let them have the memorabilia, the stuff that we've accumulated between me and you. You'll have that. I'll get you a life insurance policy. I don't want you dealing with that at all. Okay? Because I know how it is. I know how they feel about it. There's been some ill will due to life events. So that's the critical thing. You really want to be thinking beyond yourself. So succession planning is thinking about others. Okay. So hopefully today I'm going to leave it there, because then we're going to get into the next segment. It might be today because I done got all dressed up, so I might just take a break and pop back on and do another installment where we get into the nuts and bolts, get a little deeper into what the will can do effectively and some pitfalls with it, and then talk about maybe the trust and what you can do there. And then the third component, and see, I tell you, it's a lot, right? The third component is getting into the incapacitation documents, and I think they're really important. So when I say incapacitation documents, those are documents that we need to have in place so others can take care of you if you're unable to take care of yourself, but you're still living. So the will and the trust, that's when you've passed away. But there could be instances where you're dealing with dementia, you're with us, but not able to take care of yourself. So I think those documents are of prime importance, and I will not do an estate plan. And I don't think any of my colleagues, reputable colleagues, would advise a plan that does not include those documents, and namely the durable powers of attorney, medical releases, living wills, and things of that nature. So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a break and do some work, and then I'm going to come back maybe in an hour or so, and then I'm going to continue on another installment where we can continue this discussion. So thanks so much for spending some time with me, and I will reconvene, and hopefully you will join me. So thanks so much for tuning in, and you guys have a happy holiday. Okay, bye. Take care.
I'm Carmiece Graves, and I practice family law in the Washington, D.C. area.
One of the questions we have to think about, like, say if you're married and you're dealing